Hey guys, what's going on? Shaw here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Mordretha, the Endless Empress in Theater of Pain Dungeon. Now, this is a fairly highly requested boss in the comments, so I put it to a poll recently. It was pretty much a three-way tie out of the 4 options, and so it's going to be the one that I'm going to be covering. So shortly after this boss, I will be covering Venture next. I think that's how you say it, or probably not at all. I'll be covering him in Spires of Ascension, followed by the Mana Storms in the other side. So if you guys are interested in seeing some different types of bosses being tanked or how to tank them, let me know in the comments below. So thank you guys all for submitting. If you did answer or participate in that poll, I'll be doing more in the future for sure. And I do want to just hear what kind of bosses that you guys have been struggling with. So of course, let me know. We're going to dive right into this one. All right, so this is Big Mo. This is Mori, Mordretha, the Endless Empress. All right, let's talk about how we beat Big Mo. So her room is a pentagon shape, as obviously most of you guys know, and it's going to continue down this way on either side. And you essentially, the idea is that you want to tank her in the safe zone, and the safe zone is going to be this like center little pentagon here. And this zone here in the very center, you never really want her here unless you're transitioning from side to side. And then this like outside zone is also what you would consider dead zone, because this is where the rifts spawn. If you spawn in a rift or a rift spawns on top of you, you're going to immediately get stunned and probably die, because it stuns you for like 8 seconds. It's a ridiculous amount of time. And then there's typically a lot of mechanics going out, things that you have to be dodging and whatnot. So the idea is that you want to tank it in the kind of this edge here, or like close to the center, but not in the center exactly, because that gives players enough room and leeway to either dodge Dark Devastation to the left or right, dodge Grasping Rifts, dodge the contenders who spawn in the middle, as well as the charges, which I'm going to explain all throughout this video. So stay tuned for obviously some of that information. So that's how you would break down this room or dissect this room. And then depending on where the rift spawn is which side of the room you're going to want to pull her to. So it totally depends. There's no like, not everything set where the rift spawns is totally random. So you just have to kind of play that by ear. But what's nice about this boss is that the spell queuing, everything's going to happen at the same exact time. All of phase 1 works, and then as soon as you hit phase 2, it resets all of the timers, and phase 2 is exactly the same every time you do this place. Luckily, this is a tyrannical week. We don't have hero, and we don't have prideful, so this is like the rawest fight that you can see outside of like quaking. I think there could be other affixes like bursting or something that would make this probably like the most raw fight ever, but you guys will get the gist, because we have to spread out anyways. So how you're gonna pull this boss, like I just mentioned, you never want to keep her on the edge, and that's like the biggest thing that I see tanks make, is that they just like pull her and keep her where she's standing until other things happen. That's never what you want to do. You want to pull her back, and you want to pull her back to like right here. The reason for that is just because when a Grasping Rift spawns or she does Dark Dev, you want people to be able to use all 360 degrees around the boss to be able to dodge Dark Devastation. If Dark Dev happens here on the edge and your melee's trying to dodge to the left and then gets knocked back into her boss battle, they get clipped like 60 times in 1 second and die instantly. So don't let that happen. It's really funny to watch, but not when you're, pushing a 19. So pull her back a little bit. First thing that's always going to happen is Reaping Scythe. The general note about Reaping Scythe is just, if you're healthy, your regular mitigation's fine. Your shield blocks, your iron furs, your stagger. If you're at half health or like lower, you definitely want to be using some kind of DR cooldown. All right, so Dark Devastation. This ability is going to be pretty standard throughout the fight. It's always going to work the exact same. It's just when it happens with other abilities is when it gets kind of sketchy. It's always going to target a random player. It can target the tank too, so be aware of that. So if we back up a little bit right here, you'll notice that we have a melee standing here, we have a melee standing here, and a melee standing right behind the boss, and then we have Scythe. So we know that it's going to like have an 80% chance to go somewhere in this direction, and we know that this half of the boss is safe. Obviously, if it targets me, then although the melee are fine, I just have to swing to the other side. So the reason why melee and range should all stand over here is so they bait it. I've seen some groups like stand all around the boss. That's just a little bit more random. When you have a melee heavy group like I do, it's easier just to have everyone bait behind the boss. So Dark Dev goes out. It actually faces Dave, so it's going to go out this way, and it's going to either come towards counterclockwise or clockwise. And you're just going to, essentially, it's going to pretty much move at a 90-degree angle. So if it goes left or right, like these are dead zones. So you definitely want to be in kind of this area, this back half, and then you're pretty much going to be safe. So once Dark Dev goes out, you just simply move behind the boss, and you make sure, like I mentioned before, you want her in this area. Like this area is pretty much bad. You never want her in the dead middle, and you never want her on the outside. So she's in a great spot right now. After Dark Devastation, it's typically always going to be a Grasping Rift. Grasping Rift, again, can spawn anywhere on the outside of the room. In this case, it's going to spawn way over here, so we got pretty lucky. And the first Grasping Rift that ever spawns in the fight in phase 1 and in phase 2 will always have the Manifest Death with it. The Manifest Death spawns ads. These ads will spawn as soon as it expires. This animation actually like glows outwards before it expires, so if you aren't paying attention to this debuff, you can always look at kind of the animation itself. And you don't want to clip each other. That's like the worst thing. And you want everyone who drops an ad to also try to kick or interrupt their own ad, whether it's with a stun or with an actual kick. So that's normally our general rule of thumb, is everyone targets their own ad, gets a kick, and then we try to move into melee. Except obviously, like I mentioned before, with Quaking, it was a little bit difficult too. So this Deathwalker here, I didn't get aggro on. It was hitting, well, it finally targeted me at the very end, and then it died anyways. So we're going to then just compete, essentially do the same rotation. It's then going to be like a Dark Dev into a Reaping Scythe, back into a Grasping Rift, followed by ads. So Dark Devastation here, I forgot who it targeted, one of the melee, I think, and then we just rotate behind her. Following this then, Reaping Scythe, I notice that I am healthy here. I also just use Scale, so I have a pretty big absorb. So after this hit, it's gonna chunk me to like 80% health, not a big deal, gonna get healed up through like just glimmers and whatnot and beacons. Following this, it's gonna be a Grasping Rift again, except this time the Grasping Rift has no ads. So it's Grasping Rift and ads, then it's gonna be Grasping Rift, then it's gonna be ads, and it's gonna be Grasping Rift ads again. If you're in this phase for that long, typically you're not in phase 1 for that long. Like even on a 19 Tyrannical, we weren't in here for, like, we phase her shortly after. She's already at sub 60%. General rule for this is if you just backtrack or if you backpedal, you could typically go against the suck in there and you won't move. So that's better when ads are active, but even when they're not, you can kind of just keep your position without having the boss move too much. Now, right before she phases, something that you did notice is I have been mentioning that this is like a dead zone and you never want her in the middle here. But when you're about to hit phase 2 is typically when you want to try to drag her to the center, and the reason for that is because of this Echoes of Carnage. Echoes of Carnage is an ability that's going to do a fair bit of like group damage. We're all going to get chunked for a good bit of our health. It should be magical damage. I might have to double check that before I publish this video, but it should be magical damage. It's going to chunk us all, as you can see. Like, it cuts everyone's health in half. And on top of that, it's also going to spawn ads, and these ads can be anywhere essentially in this ring. So the reason you have her in the center is so you can get out, you know, either way you need to. That's an arrow, I think. So in this case, we have ads spawning. This area is all obviously like going to be completely obliterated, and so is this area. So essentially my two options that I've noticed, or like that I noticed during this fight, is I can either run out this way or I can run out this way. Both options work. There is no really preference. The big thing is you want to make it easier for your group, but also yourself to be able to get out of this, because you're going to be taking a lot of damage following this Reaping Scythe that's coming out in 3 seconds. So you want to be able to get out, turn the boss, or like turn around to face the boss, and then not get one shot. So we're going to move out this way slightly, not stand in this, and then the Reaping Scythe is going to follow here. Because I'm topped off, I'm not going to use anything. There's no reason to. If you're topped off, you're probably going to be good. The Reaping Scythe shouldn't one-shot you. There were issues in the past where it would double hit, which I've had happen to me a few times in hierarchies. And on Tyrannical weeks, it does hit insanely hard. So if you are getting chunked, call for an external, call for cooldowns. But it shouldn't be like that big of a deal. After that, we're now going to get the other part of like Echoes, which is the Ghostly Charge. And it's always going to overlap with Dark Dev. So the reason you want her semi in the middle, I have her just outside of this inner ring. The reason for this is because it gives you the most amount of room to run with Dark Dev, and Dark Dev doesn't move fast enough for people to get clipped by it if they're actually just running at normal speed, even around this far edge. So you stand in the middle, you bait first to Dark Dev, and now that we notice that it's pointing this way, this area back here is going to be safe. And if you know that the Ghastly Charges make 2 formations. I'm going to redo this. So the Ghastly Charges make 2 formations. They'll make the X formation, Or the other variation is that they like kind of come across in a way like that, which I think we'll see later in the fight. I think I actually get clipped by it. So the big thing here is that we want to bait Dark Dev at the center. So we know that it's facing out this way. And because this Ghastly Charge is coming straight across and then this one's coming across, we know that this area is safe. So this is safe. And we know that like this triangle over here is going to be safe. So I'm going to, use Stampeding Roar here. It's always good to use mobilities. And then our group is just going to back out. So if we hit play here, some of our melee run out this way. I run out this way. Scythe moves over here, which is not the greatest idea. And he ends up getting clipped by this charge, as you can see here. Slap. So make sure you come into this fight with battle reses, because that happens more often than not. It's just kind of a tough mechanic. It's also 4 a.m. So we were not very awake for this. Like I mentioned before, first Grasping Rift for every phase is always going to have a Manifest Death, which means ads are going to spawn and you're going to take a burst of damage. And Echoes of Carnage are coming out at the exact same time. This is probably the scariest overlap in the fight, as most of you know. This is a good time to use Aura Mastery, personal defensives, whatever your healer needs from the group to keep everyone alive. So we're going to battle res Scythe, but he's going to stay dead until after all of this mess is over. And this is the overlap where your goal is just to stay alive. So Echoes came out, Reaping Scythe is about to hit me, Manifest is coming, and the Rift is right next to us. It's right here, and we have the 4 melee up with ads. So the only goal here, the only objective is to kill ads. Sometimes you want to keep the stuff stacked up, like I said before, but in this case, you just need to survive. So I back out a little bit, Cutilate's right behind me, and then our other 2 ad drops were out here, but it's not a big issue because we're all going to kick our ad, stack back up, and get a kill. Or get the kills on these guys. So again, like a pretty scary overlap if you were watching the raid frames. Battle res on Scythe, he takes it now, and he's back up. Alright, so the second charge is coming out. As you can see, it's going to be the X formation again, which means that Dark Dev is going to come out shortly after. So they're slightly staggered. So the second one is weird. So the charge is going to be happening while Dark Dev happens, so you have to be paying a little bit more attention. So in this case, you want to move out as soon as the Dark Dev starts casting. So she'll start casting it here, and the charge is about to go off. So it's facing me, so I just start rotating around to the left. The Dark Dev goes to the counterclockwise, so to the right of where I was standing, and we all group back up at the center, right on this edge here, to start doing damage to the boss again. And then after that point in the fight, everything's going to kind of mellow out for a bit. The biggest damage that you're going to be taking is probably from the Reaping Scythe. So she does another Rift, but this second Rift does not have ads with it. Ads are a pretty long timer. I think it's like almost like 45 seconds between, or a minute, something like that. So you don't really have to be concerned about this Rift at all. The only issue is that the Rift is going on as this Ghastly Charge is coming out. So this one, during this fight, I thought it was an X formation, but it wasn't. It was the cross. So they're going to be moving across like this. Then I think there's one down here that I didn't see. And so I start running this way, and I think I end up getting clipped from this one behind me, just like that. Which is always really scary, because if you notice, right before that, there was a Reaping Scythe. So I did proc my cheat death there. I love that trinket. That's all I have to say. And then then the Dark Dev is going to happen after this charge finishes. When it's the cross like that, it's a little bit harder to position her, and she's in a very awkward spot. So melee who are behind her had to be really careful, but we just all cycle over here because the bait was actually pretty decent. So the Dark Dev goes off. We are going to spread for Quaking, but that's not part of the fight, obviously. And then we're going to get the ads, but this ad set has no Rift with it. So essentially it's just like spread out, and then make sure you're kicking. So I think Egg and Scythe moved out here, if I'm not mistaken. We're all going to kick our own ads, and then I'm going to try to get her back to the center, and a Reaping Scythe went off there. So as a tank, you just need to be paying attention to like the different mechanics that are going on and move her to the appropriate position. And on top of that, you have to be watching out for Reaping Scythe. You need to just be healthy throughout this entire encounter, and if you're not, use something. Bad on me is that I never use Renewal, I don't think, in this fight, so it's pretty bad. This Rift is weird too, because you're also going to get another charge here. So this charge is going to be across again. And then the other 2 are down there somewhere. Or no, this is an X. I'm an idiot. So this is another X formation. So the Grasping Rift is just finishing. And then again, the Dark Dev is going to come up after this charge finishes. So you have to make kind of quick footwork here. So Dark Dev is going to go behind the boss. We're all going to circle to this side. Again, notice where she's positioned. She's still inside of this ring and not inside of this ring. This is kind of the goal of your fight. Your melee and range DPS will thank you. Reaping Scythe is going to follow, followed by the Echoes of Carnage. You're just going to need to move out of those guys, and just maintain uptime. The next thing that's going to happen is going to be a Grasping Rift, but you're pretty much just going to go for a kill at this point. Your fight should never be this long. At least like on a Tyrannical week, right? Like a Tyrannical Mordretha at like over 3 minutes is an insanely long fight. So I hope that kind of covers most of the overlaps. I can't imagine there's going to be scenarios where you're going to see a longer fight unless your DPS is really low. But even here, like 5k with ad cleave, or sub 5k with ad cleave plus having a dead DPS during his cooldown window on the fight was not the greatest. So this, I would consider this a pretty slow kill. But that's essentially the fight. I hope that makes sense. So quick recap, Reaping Scythe, definitely the hardest hitting ability in here on the tank. If you're not above 80% health, use something. Use a small DR, a big DR, an immunity of some sort. Call for a personal cooldown. Other things that are going on in the fight is the Grasping Rift is definitely something you don't want to be on the edge of the room for. And the Ghostly Charge is something that you don't want to be in the center of the room for. So the nice sweet spot is right in that middle ring. Make sure you're just kind of moving around as you need to. And then lastly is the ads that are spawning. Just make sure you're kicking your ad and getting aggro on them as quick as possible. And it's going to make the fight so much easier. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of quick how to tank guide for Mordretha or Big Mo. Let me know what boss you guys want to see next. I did do a survey for this boss in particular, and this was the most requested boss, followed by Venturnax from Spires of Ascension. So I'll probably be covering him next. But if you let me know in the comment section below, I'll definitely consider it for a future video because I'm trying to cover all of them. If I missed anything, also let me know. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm always bad at these outros, and they always sound super cheesy. So I hope you guys are staying healthy, and I will catch you all in the next one. Take care.